Induced Transcendence, a Peyote and meditation trip report by Medicine Man, posted to earwid.org January 4th, 2018. I was raised Southern Baptist. I've been in a place of death 4 times in my life. Situations I should have died in, but yet survived, accident or injury. I entered into this self-guided meditation with the use of peyote, with the notion to forget anything that I've ever been taught beforehand. My mind was open to anything and everything, so as I would be able to make the best decision for my spirit as a whole. I embarked on this journey to cure my chronic migraines, PTSD, anxiety, and insomnia on a more holistic level. During the meditation, this report was prepared. The afterthought after 6 hours of rest and a clean mind follows. 11.7 dry grams of peyote was placed into roughly 40 capsules and consumed at 2 p.m. End of major visual aids, 11:30 p.m. The first few hours were negligible. Body temperature was high and I was clammy and sweating quite profusely. By 4 p.m, I was preparing for my normal meditation practices. No answers in my head. I suddenly realised that the difference between man and men was we think. So I pulled a piece of paper in front of me on the floor and wrote the first thing that came to my mind. Bathsheba. I heard her name spoken a few times inside of my head. This was the point where I started to receive visual aids. I never saw Bathsheba, yet I felt her lustrous presence. She was sexy, and I've never ever seen her face. I asked her for a question. How do I increase my profits? The answer is in the hilt, was an automatic response. Inside of my mind, a beautiful sword appeared, curved at the top. On the flat of the blade, I could see past the weapon itself and see an image in the blade. I'd found my answer. I thanked Bathsheba for her time as she spun the sword seductively between her fingertips. Still no face, no body, just mere essence. As I turned to leave the room, feeling oddly satisfied and 100% reassured of myself and my new plans, however, extremely dissatisfied with not being able to even help myself imagine a manifestation of energy, I saw myself in the mirror. This became meditation stage number 2. With my nose pressed against the clean glass, I now stared into the eyes of a man, inches back from the glass on his side. I found myself observing myself not as myself. I became increasingly attractive, sexy, powerful. I found myself so attracted to me that I physically wanted myself. I began lusting after myself. At this point my wife knocked and came in the room. I immediately was overwhelmed with jealousy. I was angry at her for interrupting this only time I had with her. The winds were shifting outside, which was the reason for the intrusion. As I came outside to admire another possible freak storm, I saw Bathsheba's jealousy transform into a beautiful storm cell, producing a massive funnel cloud sideways of the main branch of clouds. It appeared prominent enough that everyone in the family, me being the only one on peyote, could see it, and we were all taking pictures. Out of this storm fell some hail. One hail, in particular, landed directly in the palm of my hand, and then bounced to the ground. I picked it up and saw a good-sized, beautiful piece of hail, enveloped in a larger piece. I placed this piece in my mouth after pictures and show and tell. The taste was out of this world amazing. Granted, I had been fasting since consumption. However, the burst of water when it melted quenched my thirst until midnight. It was the most special gift I have received. As I watched the storm, it was clearly apparent to me that this storm was a direct action of jealousy. Not only did my old friend Bathsheba help guide me, she wanted me for herself. I sat outside, enjoying the jealousy of this spirit, when I began to see tiny things in the air. If the background was right, and you had the ability to see beyond what you were seeing, this is where you will find this life. Millions of tiny bubbles of light. Naturally, I became euphoric and giggly. My first time in my life seeing something that isn't truly there. Or was it? Well, which I now know, it was. After initial glance, I was able to see them easier and easier if I look at them correctly. Once they became apparent all around me, I noticed they were not randomly moving around. What I thought was chaos of particles were the very fibres of life itself. It takes tens of thousands of millions of these bubbles to make up one atom, so I have read. These bubbles were in a pattern, grouped together, and they were pulsing. Everything in our universe operates in a frequency of vibrations and pulses. A constant beat emitted from our sun, somewhat similar to the heart. A group of 6 groups or so, very hard to identify how many exactly, will be orbiting around each other. Still then pulse, still then pulse, orbiting themselves but never touching. They reminded me of gnats in the air. If I looked at a darker background I couldn't see them, but a lighter one like the sky, I could make them out. What is quite peculiar is that they are unaffected by the physical elements. It was high winds, yet they remained constant, unchanged, unaltered. Floating there, orbiting, pulsing. It rained, and still they remained the same, ever so constant. Sitting down and gazing into this matter that I was being able to see, I realised this wasn't the first time I've seen these bubbles. I've had a fair few head traumas over the years, and when I get hit in the head hard, I see this life out of my peripheral vision, everywhere except the spot I'm directly looking at. Some may appear to be U-shaped, although they are transparent, but translucent enough to be visible to the naked eye, possibly third eye at this point. I fixed upon this gaze and in wonderment at the newfound world around me, and spotted one small cluster, slightly bigger than the rest, that never moved, until I physically noticed it. Once I tried to focus directly on it, it would jerk away, lost into the millions of smaller bubbles. After many failed attempts, I was able to lock on to my newfound object, the direct centre of my pupil. Once locked into the gaze and looking inside of this cluster, it began to enlarge, pulsing. Each pulse was a larger image, all translucent but definitely there. With each of these enlargements came an adrenaline rush like that of a roller coaster. When it took over all of my vision, I was so adrenaline stacked I felt like I just jumped out of a plane. Then I blinked and lost everything. Surely I was about to see inside of myself if I could have hung on. I must not blink to be able to see this newfound dimension. Imagine looking into space at the stars. I blink, it shuts the shutter on my camera and resets the focus. I'm back at square one. The longer I keep my shutter open, the more and farther I shall see. It does hurt and tears roll down my face, but once I passed the first 3 tears swells, I was golden. I lasted over an hour without blinking for my first time ever. A fellow spirit suggested a dark room for my meditation purposes. This is where I turned my 5-foot closet into a vast universe, woven together with translucent prisms of soft light. Once inside of the eye, no blinking, I noticed that I had to remind myself that my eyes were open. It was more comfortable at this point to keep them open. To close them and keep them shut required effort. Leaving them open was easier. Inside of a soft glow, I was able to see inside and around. I witnessed a star inside of each prism of light. I think of prisms as square. These were not. They were round, soft fibres. When I ran my hand around the air, I was left with soft traces. I was creating my own fibres, pulsing colours by my actions. This is where I met fear, and also found myself. The search for my pupil again was the first thing on my mind in the dark room. Ecstatic for the knowledge that awaited me on the other side. Once I found it, however, I noticed a face in the dark, the size of the tiny bubbles. The more my eyes were opened, the bigger it became. I'd placed my back against the wall for a safety measure before I began. The face became massive, turned into something demonic, then a skeleton. It honestly terrified me, but I knew not to show it. With my back against the wall, I did what I always do in such situations. I jumped at it. Boo! Was all I could think to come up with on the spot. I'm not afraid of you. I see the face inside of the face and beyond, and it's me. Fear is product of my own imagination. It was at this point during the experience that I was recording my sessions via voice recorder. After I made this courageous move against myself, I realised that I was the only one there to begin with. There were no other manifestations in this realm. I no longer felt and will no longer fear the unknown any longer. It is now known. Unevolved minds are the only physical danger in our realm. Interesting tid. The brightest light of all is that which emits from our souls. The light being so bright that when I finally located my pupil, and I successfully transcended, I was blinded as if I just stared at the sun itself. The light was peeking from behind my eyes like there were moons during an eclipse. The light barely visible at its most outer edges. Everything related to the cosmos. After glorious lights and galaxies discovered, I stopped for a mirror meditation. The man that stood before me was me. I opened my gaze and began to see more than myself within myself. My face and features were slightly changing, the eyes always the same, yet they were not my eyes. Scars appeared all over my face. A dark shadow formed over my face, and I saw the silhouette of a mushroom on my forehead embed inside of a prominent scar I really have. At this point, I asked the question: future, past, or present? I saw my original scars protruding from the marks of these other souls. Old, ancient, bearded, always me, however not physically me, but my personality, my soul, all blended together. They were all clearly attached to me, and there were at least 3 faces. The last of the warriors had black rings around his eyes, painted perhaps, bruised or possibly aged. I saw hatred in their eyes, especially the dark-eyed. Hatred, violence, anguish, hurt. Once I recognized them as individuals inside of myself, I knew this was not the first time I had seen them. The dark-eyed man, when I was a boy. I remember those eyes telling me to stand up and fight in a life or death situation that my 15-year-old body had found itself in. Again, on an opponent after an affair discovered. All of my souls had something in common. The 7 deadly sins. My souls looked like they could use a little peace, tired. They stood before in the mirror as if standing to be judged, not proud of their actions, yet damn sure not ashamed of them. One thing for sure though, I saw victors of battles won or yet to be won. I'm a leader, a man amongst men. It is my purpose, my being. This sit down with myself changed everything. We are recycled back into each other. Man and woman elopes, spawns a child. This new DNA has no soul, only body until one established themselves into it at birth. When one spirit dies, his soul will rise to be judged. Or we rise and have the ability to move on to other worlds and other hosts, or reincarnate back at birth. Earth is the place designed by God to die. From the ashes we were made, and from the ashes we will return. This is the place where shit goes to die. We are the only mortal beings. Our purpose is to one day die, it's a fact. So with that being said, we live in hell as we recycle back into planet Earth. We continually deplete our planet's resources to the verge of wasteland. Our hell could be a nuclear holocaust filled with plague, famine, disease, or it could be the beach in Hawaii. The choice is ours as a people, as a divine spirit. It is our mission to prefabricate the walls we find ourselves in, to promote healthy living amongst our people. The wars we face today are not biblical. They are merely us doing what we cannot do, getting along. World peace could be the only answer. Instead of nations, brothers. One family helping another family out. All citizens of planet Earth, all spirits of this world and possibly others creating life for life. We are our own creators. It is overwhelming that we are but ants on a molehill. The possibility that once released from this fleshy host, our spirit is released into whatever form we may choose wherever in the cosmos we may choose, if we're lucky enough to have a choice. However, here we are for a reason, to evolve our minds to a higher level of enlightenment, to help our brothers and sisters across our lands to find a more holistic and healthy approach to life as we know it, to start turning hell into a metropolis. Afterthought, the storm of jealousy. Outside, after observing this beautiful storm, I began to see my first time ever visual aids. I began to see these little gnat-like creatures flying around everywhere, but I could only see them against a light background. Upon feeling very euphoric and giggly and ecstatic of finally seeing results, I began to fix my gaze just right. I must look beyond what I see to see what is really between what I see. With the gaze just right, my third eye opening up, I began to notice that these small globes of light bubbles were centralized together in groups and were orbiting themselves at a fast pace. Never did they touch. They would move in pulses, vibrations if you will. The wind picked up, and I noticed that these particular light bubbles were unaffected by our physical elements, never changing. Your body passes right through them, yet they remain pulsing. I spotted my pupil hanging out with the other light bubbles. When I attempted to look directly at it, it would jerk away. If you looked at it in your peripheral, it began to get larger at each pulse. until it took over my entire vision screen. With that came a large roller coaster of adrenaline. So much as it broke my gaze at the very end, I blinked. I'm sure if I was able to hold on a moment longer, I would have been looking right inside of myself. I'm sure what was happening was my pupils were dilating back, and I was entering my third eye, or inner eye, as I think it should be better termed. The dark room. So finding the darkest of places is the challenge. Little lights began to appear throughout the room. It was difficult to remember that my eyes were wide open as if they felt shut. I virtually could see nothing inside of the dark room. Locating my pupil, my inner eye, was difficult at first. During the search, I realized the brightest of lights were being emitted from inside of my inner eye. Upon realization of this light, other mysterious fabrics of light began to materialize. I began to see a face. I felt the initial reaction of fear. Every apparition that was visible to me was being produced out of fear inside of myself. I asked Bathsheba if she was present with me, and asked her for assistance to remove the fear blockage so that I could continue to be enlightened. At the disappearance of fear, I began to realize that everything that I was seeing around me is always happening. Only now I had the gift to be able to see it in live action. Life at its purest form. Perhaps since everything is always happening continuously, any spirits would not be able to see me. I was granted the power to observe life at its most elementary elements. Keeping my third eye open and focused is a tough skill, especially for a young soul to attain. Everything directly and easily were identifiable and directly related to the cosmos. Once I noticed and acknowledged the presence of fear, it immediately evaded me, possibly forever. I began to dissect fear in itself. The only thing to fear on this realm is mankind, and not to fear them, but learn from them, and be wary of human nature and its tendency to kill off its host in the most inhospitable way. A prominent haze of soft green lights, as if suspended in air, appeared before me solid and steady, readily visible from my newfound vision. They were soft and barely visible, yet they're none the same and ready for me to observe. Once my focus was fixed upon the new light, as I was able to see sideways into the light, inside of it, a galaxy of its own. Stars, including one in particular, emerged. It reminded me of the North Star. I felt as if inside of me I had realized that we are infinite and everything around us is infinitive within itself. At this point, I began to notice traces being left in the air, after moving my invisible hand through the matter before me. Only 3 colours were prominent: red, green, and sometimes blue, all soft. Hard to describe with words the fabrics of space and time that I was able to perceive in that moment. Once my third eye was open, it became increasingly easier to refocus on the object at hand and increase my gaze using my vision, to not only see what is in front of me, but what is between me. These objects, orbs of light, are ever constant, unchanging by the physical elements in front of us, the same as the essence of life that I witnessed outside. I wished at this point I had learnt how to meditate without blinking as I did a few hours after this experiment, as I am positive my visions would have been deeper. I began to see light traces of essence, no-seums, vibrating and pulsing as they did outside, orbiting themselves in a binarial pattern. Once I was seeing inside of the dimension, I would always see distant red dots like planets, in a rotational path with something, and yet moving as the essence of life does to a pattern, a binaural beat of some nature. The visualization of life around me clearly somehow made it 100% aware in me that I was utterly alone. My spirit nor souls had no apparent friends in this realm, which saddened me. I saw no physical manifestations of energy or life. I felt as if my spirit was alone in the cosmosphere. There were no other spirits with my capabilities of communication. I completely and comfortably debunked any supernatural feeling or superstition that I have attained in my life. I even attempted to strike fear into a prism of lights that appeared, and they remained unaffected. Listening to the recorder on my phone, I could hear the background noise of someone in the house speaking clearly. During my darkroom meditation, I heard nothing except the distant humming of the sun. The brightest light seemed to be coming from inside of my inner eye, as if my eyes were planets blocking the sun in an almost perfect eclipse. Mirror meditation. Sitting upright in front of my mirror, I pressed my nose against the glass and slowly moved backwards, observing myself from a different perspective. The more I gazed, the more my flat reflective became a 3D man staring back at me. I noticed deep inside of my eyes there appeared to be a small light in each pupil. Gazing into this light transformed my eye into a crazy cat-eye looking appearance, then into a spinning, pulsing, orbiting essence, much like that of the noisiums outside. My left eye seems to not be as strong as the right. Most feeling is in the right. No light in the mirror proved no results or clarifications. I began to stare at just myself. I felt hatred inside of the eyes looking back at me, and then all feelings of emotions were gone, and I was just there, ready to observe. As the different characteristics began to take form in my face, I felt not fear nor discovery. I felt as if I knew what was coming. Scars appeared to promenade all over my face. My beard grew longer as I focused my gaze into his eyes. Stare at yourself in the mirror for long enough and you will find yourself staring at someone other than yourself. I notice these are not my eyes as I look into them. Same shape, same colour, yet not mine. I know not of the tale nor the life, but I have seen the faces within. Scars appeared all over myself, weathered. I asked him why so much hatred. No response. I felt as if I could possibly communicate with this soul directly if I only knew how. 3 faces inside of my own, each different but still the same. I began to pay particular attention to the original scars which I know I created in my life. As I observed, I noticed scars forming not only under my own, but over them as well, meaning that not only is this a soul from my past, but one in the future as well. As I realized this, my eyes grew dark rings around them, almost black with age. Scars appeared all over my face. A large mushroom began to appear, perhaps painted on my forehead, as if the cap were pointed towards a particular direction in the sky. The mushroom was embedded in one of my deep, natural, I really have this one, scars across my forehead. Lines began to trace across my face to form some sort of half-face mask helmet, yet the beard remained and grew longer. I believe to have experienced my first ego death in this moment. I was suddenly rather keen to the notion and idea that when we die, we recycle back to birth, Earth being hell. Our hell was once roamed by massive creatures, dinosaurs, that would shred a human to pieces. Out of the pits rose the civilization of man. Thus meaning, if we are recycling amongst ourselves, our hell could just as easily be a paradise instead of a nuclear wasteland. The choice is ours. Although this information changes everything. It doesn't change anything because everything is irrelevant though. Within my spirit was past, future and present. 3 individual souls of the same spirit. Me. 1 Corinthians 12:12 unity and diversity in one body. For as the body is one as many members, but all the members of that one body being many are one body, so also is Christ. Dark room number 2. So here is where I experienced the same lights and fibres of before. No newfound knowledge, just more wonderment to how the cosmos reacts around us daily. I am but an infant on the very foothills of knowledge itself. I felt myself trying to keep my eyes closed. They grew so heavy I couldn't close them, they just stayed open. After 3 drops of tears from eyes remaining open, the pain of not blinking disappeared completely. My face grew numb and cold, and my feet and hands well began to numb out. My breath, no longer an issue in my mind, began to slow. My breath was so faint, yet it was enough to keep me going. My eyes had never felt so open. I imagined my eye as a shutter on a camera. The longer it remained open, the farther and deeper I'll be able to see. Every time I blink, I reset the focus on my inner eye. The pressure in my head was being released out the back of my skull and out of my mind wide open. I was wide open to the world. I remember feeling as if I could leave this body, if I only had the knowledge and return. But the fear of my physical body not being able to draw breath with me in it kept me slightly rooted. Not the fear of death per se, for that is irrelevant, but for the fear of humanity being left behind without access to this knowledge. This is the true form, as I believe, to open my inner eye during meditation, to see into the 7th dimension. I lost these visual aids around midnight. yet remained unblinking in a trance-like state until 6:30 the next morning. My head had never felt so full, as if my brain has been enlarged in a very comfortable way. What I learned: we are one spirit, but many souls, infinite within ourselves. The mortal body dies, it is its purpose. The soul is eternal and immortal, and as thus recycles into an available host, baby or organism, reincarnation for lack of a better word. I do not believe that animal spirits and humanoid spirits commingle. They do coexist as the very essence of life itself and may partner to achieve happiness and a common goal. The question remains, are they the same soul regenerating into ourselves until our time of punishment is done? We were created in the image of our maker, yet there are other makers as well. A more holistic lifestyle needs to be realised, and a planetary treaty should be reached to achieve the next stages of life. No longer countries and governments against each other, but brothers of the same planet, living in harmony with each other. More alternative options for fuel would be a great start. If we stop robbing our planet of the very life she provides, we would see a new growth and a new age of mankind. I've got to say, I think personally that was one of the most awe-inspiring reports I've actually ever read on the channel. I think for some people they might get a bit confused because obviously the second half is a reiteration of the first half. So just to go back to the beginning, he says that during the meditation this report was prepared. The afterthought after 6 hours of rest and a clean mind follows. That's a pretty unique way to structure a trip report, I'd say, and I think it really hammers home the experience in a more nuanced, more in-depth and a broader fashion, really just hammering home the best way to convey an experience as ineffable as this. How amazing that he actually had these thoughts within his own experience as it was happening and scribed them, and then went back later on after reflecting the experience. Obviously there was only 6 hours of integration, but like he says, 6 hours of rest and a clean mind. You're going to have a completely clearer way of looking at this insanely transcendent experience that you've just gone through, but that's massively complemented by his conveyance of what he felt during the actual moment. I think this is really amazing. I bet it confused a lot of people. I bet they thought, oh, what is he just going around in circles here? But nah, hopefully he stuck around for the commentary, because I'm sure that enlightened many of you who were a bit lost during that. But yeah, I think this was brilliantly explained. I really got the feeling. I really felt as if I was there with him as I was reading this. As you've noticed on the channel, I've started reading a lot more in-depth, longer reports, and I'm going to keep up with that. No more 7 to 11 minute reports on the channel anymore. That's why I've been doing sort of like the other 5 astonishing 12-gram mushroom trip reports that go on for like 17 to 40 minutes. I enjoy reading more. I enjoy reading more reports and more in-depth reports, and I bet you enjoy listening to them as well. So yeah, no more short stories on the channel anymore. Gonna be, well, in terms of trip reports, just gonna be featuring super chunky ones that I think are some of the very best. And if they are short, I'll be featuring them in a massive compilation of, say, I don't know, 10 short trip reports. Just basically, I just want to spread the wide gamut of flavour that exists within the sphere of the trip reporting world, and I hope you guys are looking forward to that, because this is a great step for the channel, and it's just something I take so much passion in. I literally cannot go a day without making these videos. They're really the most fun I have during the day. This means everything to me. But I'm getting soppy now. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe. Support me on Patreon, check out the Instagram, check out the Discord, and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.